What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers, doing a fast break episode talking about basketball, and more basketball today. As you can see, if you're watching, I'm in my home as well. No real reason, but we'll see what the vibes are. Thank you for being here. Let's get into it. First up, the NBA in-season tournament was a hit. And I'm not just saying that because my Lakers won it, although that was nice too. Now, you're going to see people saying it was a failure or it didn't bring in casual fans or start talking about TV ratings, but who gives a shit? One of the greatest realizations I've had is that people not liking what I like doesn't have to take away from what I like. Obviously, it wasn't the playoffs or March Madness, but it did what it was supposed to do by getting players to play harder than they would normally play in November and December. I'm sure there are going to be some tweaks to it moving forward, but players playing harder will lead to the things that people are saying didn't happen this go round. It also gave some teams and players who don't typically get on national TV the opportunity to step up and get noticed, most notably Tyrese Haliburton and the Indiana Pacers. In the season preview, I talked about how good Haliburton was last year and how the Pacers were a playoff team before he got hurt. Well, he's even better this season, and surprise, surprise, so are the Pacers. I can't say that I completely understand it right now. I mean, he's got a funky looking shot. He looks like Jordan Baker from the CW's teen drama All-American, and his athleticism doesn't exactly jump off the page, but dude can hoop. Funky jump shot and all. He's a knockdown shooter. He's one of the best playmakers in the league. He's leading the league in assist at 12.1, which is 1.5 more than Trae Young, who's in second place, and he's fifth in assist to turnover ratio. Also, he's not afraid of big moments or competition. The Pacers beat the Celtics, Bucks, 76ers, and Cavs in the tournament, who were the top 4 teams in the East last season. The game against the Bucks was particularly interesting to me because he made Dame Lillard sad. Tyrese hit a dagger three-pointer, and then he did a pretty mild Dame time celebration. When Dame was asked about it post-game, he started off good with his answer, saying, quote, "For as many times as I've done it to people, I can't be upset when somebody else does it. I think that's also a sign of respect and acknowledgement for knowing my history, knowing what I do. I didn't mind it. It was what it was." Boom. Great perspective on it. He got the best of you, it happens. But then he kept talking, saying, quote, "I've also known that when you're having your moment, it's important to be careful and be humble because you just never know how the table turns and when it's gonna turn. I respect it. We shook hands after the game, but I wasn't moved by it left or right." You completely lose me when you start talking about being humble. It negates everything else he said. He was clearly moved by it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be telling Tyrese to be humble. That's loser talk. You want him to be humble? Well, you should have beaten him. Nobody tells losers to be humble because the L takes care of that naturally. We didn't have to tell Dame to be humble after this one, did we? Dame has lost me with how he's been talking leading up to the trade, and then with this, he keeps speaking in riddles and innuendo. Just come right out and say, "I wasn't bothered by that, but please believe next time we play them, I'm gonna bust his ass." Or something about a broke watch being right twice a day. Not this humble bullshit. Luckily, these two play again on Wednesday, so we get to see what time it is. But I'm sold on Tyrese Haliburton. Moving on, someone who is on the opposite trajectory as Tyrese and used the tournament to show it is Zion Williamson. I try to be slow to write guys off because I generally want them to succeed, especially someone as talented as Zion, who's from South Carolina. But what are we doing here? The semis against the Lakers, that was rock bottom. There appears to be a lot more of Zion than there used to be and than there should be. As a result, he's not as explosive as he was. He doesn't sprint. He appears to just be out there kind of going through the motions. It was distracting. The TNT crew featuring Shaq and Charles, probably the two stars known most for their struggles with conditioning issues, basically held an intervention for him. Now, we think of Shaq and Charles as being fat players, but they were in shape and productive early in their careers. Moses Malone got Chuck on the right track in a hurry, and people forget how Shaq looked in his Orlando days and early LA years. And even when Shaq got big enough to make Kobe hate him, I can't remember ever watching him play and thinking to myself, look at this lazy asshole. I would say, oh man, he's fat or he needs to get into shape, but the effort was mostly there. Zion's just waddling around out there like a Gen Z Oliver Miller. And even Oliver has gotten in shape in retirement. If Zion hasn't gotten it now, particularly after all the talk at the end of last season and heading into the offseason, When's he going to get it? He clearly knows what he needs to do, and he has every tool at his disposal to do so. He's talked about doing it, yet here he is looking and playing worse than ever. He wouldn't be the first guy to eat himself out of the league or waste potential, but he might be the most talented. Hopefully, he gets it together. All right, let's finish up on the in-season tournament with my Lakers. I'll try to be brief, but it gave me hope, which is both beautiful and dangerous. However, I'm choosing to enjoy it. Indiana's on pace to be the best offensive team in NBA history, and LA was able to hold them 19 points below their season average. They threw a bunch of different looks at Haliburton to slow him down, and they didn't let anybody else go off. Most importantly, Anthony Davis showed up ready to play aggressive basketball. 41 points, 20 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 blocks, plus 0 3-pointers taken. He doesn't have to put up those numbers every game, but he does have to show up with that level of intensity if this team is going to come close to fulfilling its potential. Then there's LeBron. He was tournament MVP, and again, he's been playing 73 years. There's nothing harder than being self-aware enough to adjust your game as your athleticism deteriorates. We've seen it with all the greats. We're seeing it now with Klay Thompson and Russell Westbrook. This is why great careers usually end ugly, but LeBron has figured out how to do it as good as anyone I've ever seen, which is why even though his athleticism isn't the same as it used to be, his effectiveness and impact is pretty close. Austin Reaves showed up and showed out. The day of the game, a picture of an old Sports Illustrated cover was making the rounds on Twitter. It was a black and white photo of some 1950s white basketball players with a bar at the top that said "Special Report," and the title was "Whatever Happened to the White Athlete." I went and read the article, and it was about as tone deaf as you're imagining. There was a hilarious quote from Brent Barry where he says that while he appreciates players who make it out the hood, it actually requires more effort to make it out the suburbs because it's so comfortable there. Yes, that Brent Barry, because this wasn't some old-timey racist article. It actually came out December 7th, 1997, and little did the author or anybody interviewed know, but tiny Austin Reaves was growing inside of his mother, ready to meet the world months later and answer the question of what happened to the white athlete. He's probably never going to be the star that some fans were hoping he would become after he re-signed with the Lakers due to some obvious limitations, his strength in defense. But he can be a great role player, and you need great role players to win. In the grand scheme of things, this in-season tournament doesn't mean a lot, but I'm hoping it's got the Lakers locked in after watching sluggish start after sluggish start the past couple of years. Let's talk some women's college hoops real quick, starting with another team I'm a fan of, the Lady Gamecocks. They just keep winning. The number one team in the nation, 9-0 with 4 wins against the top 25. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year after losing every starter, including number 1 overall pick Aliyah Boston off last year's team that was undefeated until they lost to Iowa in the Final Four. But Dawn Staley is a wizard, so never mind. And I know she's a wizard because they're doing it so much differently than last year's team. Still a focus on defense with a big anchor in the middle with Camila Cardoso, but offensively they have so much more versatility thanks in large part to having a ton of shooters. It hasn't always looked pretty, and you can tell they're still figuring things out, but I really believe this team has a higher ceiling than last year's squad. It's hard not to be confident about their chances in March when you're watching them figure out how to win these close games against tough teams despite having the issues they have, because the issues they have will get solved as the season goes on. Will they go undefeated? Probably not. There will be growing pains, but that's part of the process. Couple of players to watch if you aren't locked in yet. Utah gave South Carolina all they could handle, thanks mostly to Alissa Pili. She's an undersized post player, just 5'10", but she's strong, she's got great feet, and she can knock down threes. The Lady Gamecocks have a ton of long, athletic bigs, and they just couldn't do anything with her. She dropped 37. Then there's the team that I think would give the Lady Gamecocks the most trouble, UCLA. They've got Lauren Betts, who might be the best post player in the country. She's 6'7", and she does everything with effort, intention, and aggressiveness. If you watch her, pay attention to where she posts up. I guarantee you it's going to be within a step of the charge circle at worst. So many bigs post up whenever they meet a certain amount of resistance from the defense, but Betts is like, nope, we're going down here whether you like it or not. Then she seals the defender, makes herself even bigger to give the passer a great target. She's got good hands to catch it, and it's automatic after that. Also, pay attention to how she sets up her post-ups when she rolls off screens. She looks like she approaches screening as not only a way to free up her teammate, but also as step one in establishing post position. While we're on women's hoops, the WNBA just did their draft lottery. Now, we still have a ways to go with the rest of the college season, obviously, and free agency, but kind of fun to look at what we got going on there. As we're playing WNBA general manager, the Indiana Fever got the first pick, and I'd bet a lot of money that they're going to pick Caitlin Clark. She's obviously an offensive wizard and on her way to breaking Kelsey Plum's NCAA career scoring record, and she even has a shot at Pistol Pete's record as well. The Fever could use someone like that, a lot of teams could, and she'll pair nicely with Aaliyah Boston. They also still have Grace Berger there as well, so I might let Grace run the point and stick Caitlin at the 2. Speaking of the 2, the number 2 pick goes to the LA Sparks. I think that this is going to be Stanford's Cameron Brink. My hottest take of the day is that I might take Brink over Clark if I was starting a team from scratch. She's one of the best defensive players in the country, and I think that translates to the pro game immediately. Her offensive game has come a long ways too. She was mostly scoring off of offensive rebounds and rim runs, but now she's much more versatile. She's a good playmaker for her size, and her shooting is light years better. She doesn't take a lot of threes yet, but I think that's coming next. The one she does take, she makes them at a pretty good clip. And she's already gotten her free throw percentage from the mid-60s her first 2 years all the way up to an almost automatic 96% this year. That's Elena Deladon territory. Call me crazy, but I think if you shoot that well from the free throw line, then you can probably shoot threes too. Those first 2 picks feel like locks. It gets a little bit hazier after that. A lot of it depends on who takes their COVID year, most notably Paige Beckers. Should be a ton of talent available though, and these are just my initial thoughts. I'll definitely do more on this as we get closer to the draft. Other than that, I definitely have Shohei thoughts. As a Dodgers fan, they're positive ones. I'm going to do an episode on that for sure, but I'm going to wait until Brett can join me. That whole ordeal was just wild as hell. I will say I thought he was going to Toronto, and I was mentally preparing to hate him. Anyways, this has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Appreciate you checking it out. Don't forget to check out the My Favorite Team Ever series. Couple of good episodes there already with my guys James Page and KP, aka Fry Drexler. I am out. I will catch you next week.